You remember the street. That long, dusty street in Dodge City. Marshal Matt Dillon standing there, tall enough to make the whole town go quiet. You remember the opening gunfight, the hand near the holster, the empty road, the feeling that justice was about to walk straight toward danger and not blink. You remember Miss Kitty inside the Long Branch, Doc Adams complaining like the whole town was his impossible patient, Chester limping beside the marshal, Festus calling him Matthew like no one else on television ever could. But here is the truth that makes Gunsmoke feel different in 2026. Dodge City looked permanent. The cast was not. James Arness is gone. Milburn Stone is gone. Amanda Blake is gone. Dennis Weaver is gone. Ken Curtis is gone. Burt Reynolds is gone. Roger Ewing died in December 2025. And now, Buck Taylor is the last surviving regular from the main cast. The town survived. The people did not. That is what nobody tells you first. Gunsmoke was not just another Western. It ran for 20 seasons, 635 episodes. From 1955 to 1975, America kept returning to Dodge City, as if the street would always be there. But what fans did not see was that every person on that street was walking toward a final exit. One actor carried a real war wound into the role that made him immortal. One actress became the heart of a saloon, then spent her final years fighting for animals and facing illness. One deputy left the show, and had to escape a limp that America would not forget. One singer became Festus, and replaced a character fans thought could not be replaced. One young actor rode into Dodge, then left Hollywood almost completely behind. One future movie legend passed through the town, before becoming bigger than the show itself. And one man, who played Newly O'Brien, is now the final witness. This is Gunsmoke, the cast in 2026, and the story behind the last survivor of Dodge City. Before we start with the actors, remember what Gunsmoke gave people. It gave them a town where violence had rules, a saloon where secrets waited, a doctor's office where truth sounded bitter but kind, a marshal's office where the badge looked heavier than metal, and a street where every episode seemed to ask the same question: who walks away this time? That question made the show powerful. But decades later, the question has changed. Now it is not about who survives the gunfight. It is about who survived the years. Start with James Arness. Marshal Matt Dillon, the tall shadow at the center of everything. The man who did not need to shout, because his silence already had authority. When Matt Dillon stepped into the street, you knew the scene had changed. Men could lie in the saloon, men could swagger at the bar, men could pull a gun and pretend they were fearless. But when Dillon arrived, the air became smaller. The audience believed James Arness was simply born to play him. But the opposite truth is this: the body that made him look invincible had already been damaged by war. Arness served in World War II. He was wounded at Anzio. That injury affected him for the rest of his life. So when viewers saw that huge marshal crossing Dodge City, they were not only seeing Hollywood's strength, they were seeing a man who had already carried pain before he ever carried the badge. That changes the role. Matt Dillon was not just tall. He was burdened. He looked like justice, but he also looked tired from having to deliver it every week. And that was the secret of Gunsmoke. It was not really about shooting. It was about the cost of being the person everyone expects to stand. Arness played Matt Dillon for the entire series, from the black and white early years, through the color years, through the later TV movies. He played Dillon across decades. That kind of role is a gift. But it is also a chain. Because when one character becomes that big, people stop asking where the actor ends. They just see the badge. They see the hat. They see the marshal. And maybe that is why Arness stayed so closely tied to the role. Dodge City needed him. The audience needed him. Television history needed him. But time did not care about the badge. James Arness died in 2011 at age 88. And when he died, it felt like the marshal had finally walked off the street. Not in a shootout, Not with a dramatic speech. Just gone. The man who made Dodge City feel protected could not protect the town from time. And once the marshal was gone, the whole show felt more fragile. But Matt Dillon was not alone. Every marshal needs someone who tells him the truth, even when he does not want to hear it. That was Doc Adams, Milburn Stone. The doctor with the sharp tongue, the tired eyes, and the strange ability to make irritation sound like love. You remember him. Doc standing in his office. Doc arguing with Matt. Doc complaining about fools, then still trying to save them. Doc acted like he had no patience left, but somehow he always had enough to help. The audience believed Doc was only the town doctor. But the opposite truth is this. Milburn Stone was one of the anchors that made Gunsmoke feel real. He played Doc for the full run of the series, 20 seasons. That means while criminals came and went, while deputies changed, while the town grew older on screen, Doc stayed. He was not just treating wounds. He was carrying the memory of the town. And here is the painful irony. The man who played the doctor died from a heart attack. Milburn Stone had a long career before Gunsmoke. But Doc became his final and defining role. He gave the town its conscience, not the clean kind, the grumbling kind. The kind that says people are stupid, then quietly fights to keep them alive anyway. That is why Doc mattered. Matt Dillon represented law. Doc represented survival. He saw what bullets did after the dramatic music stopped. He saw the blood, the fear, the regret. The men who thought they were brave until they were lying on a table. That made Doc one of the most human figures in Dodge. But real life did not give him a final scene in the office. Milburn Stone died in 1980 at age 75. A heart attack. The doctor was gone, and once you know that, his old scenes feel different. Every time Doc rushes to help someone, you remember that no one could do the same for him in the end. But the heart of Dodge City was not only in the marshal's office, it was also inside the Long Branch Saloon. And that means Miss Kitty. Amanda Blake. The red hair. The calm stare. The woman who could stand behind a bar and somehow make the whole room behave differently. Miss Kitty was not just decoration. She was not just the woman in the saloon. She was power. A different kind of power than Matt Dillon had. Matt had the badge. Kitty had the room. She knew who was lying. She knew who was dangerous. She knew when a man was pretending to be stronger than he was, and she knew Matt Dillon better than almost anyone. The audience believed Miss Kitty was the romantic mystery of the show. But the opposite truth is this. Amanda Blake became one of the emotional foundations of Gunsmoke. For nearly 2 decades, she made the Long Branch feel like the one place where Dodge City could breathe. She played Kitty from 1955 until 1974. That is almost the entire life of the series. And the unanswered question fans still feel is this. What exactly were Matt and Kitty to each other? The show never gave the audience a simple answer. That was the power. One look across the saloon could say more than a full confession. One quiet conversation could feel more intimate than a kiss. One goodbye could carry years of things unsaid. That is what kept people watching. Not only the gunfights, the silence, the almost love. The thing that lived between them but never fully stepped into the light. But Amanda Blake's real life after Gunsmoke moved in a different direction. She became deeply involved in animal welfare. She helped protect animals. She gave her time and name to causes beyond Hollywood. That matters. Because Miss Kitty spent years surrounded by men who brought danger into the saloon. Amanda Blake spent her later life trying to protect living things from danger. But her own ending was painful. She had survived oral cancer years earlier. Then, in 1989, Amanda Blake died at age 60. Reports later said her death involved AIDS-related complications. That fact shocked many fans, because America had kept Miss Kitty frozen in the warm light of the Long Branch. But Amanda Blake was not frozen. She was real, vulnerable, mortal, and gone far too young. Once you know that, Miss Kitty's scenes with Matt Dillon feel heavier. The woman who seemed impossible to shake left the street before many fans were ready, and Dodge City lost its heart. But before Festus, before Newley, before the later years, there was Chester. Dennis Weaver. Chester Good. The limp. The loyalty. The familiar call of Mr. Dillon. You remember that voice. You remember the way Chester followed the marshal, not like a sidekick trying to look brave, but like a man who believed loyalty was its own kind of courage. The audience believed Chester was simple, but the opposite truth is this. Dennis Weaver had to fight to be seen beyond him. Chester's limp became famous. Too famous. It made him instantly recognizable. But it also became a trap. Because when a physical detail defines a character, the audience starts to forget the actor is acting. They think the limp is the man. They think the voice is the man. They think the loyalty is the whole person. But Dennis Weaver was more than Chester. He left Gunsmoke in the 1960s, and that decision mattered. Because he escaped before the role could completely swallow him. Then he proved something important. He could survive outside Dodge City. He later starred in McCloud. He appeared in Duel, the tense television film directed by a young Steven Spielberg. He also became known for environmental activism. That is one of the most interesting stories in the cast. Chester looked like the man who could not move freely. Dennis Weaver became one of the actors who did. That is the opposite truth. The character had a limp. The actor kept moving. But even that kind of escape has an ending. Dennis Weaver died in 2006, at age 81, and with him went one of the first voices that made Gunsmoke feel like home. When you hear Mr. Dillon now, it sounds different. It is not only a catchphrase, it is a ghost calling down the street. But Gunsmoke did something dangerous after Chester left. It introduced another deputy, another sidekick, another comic force, and fans could have rejected him. Instead, he became unforgettable. Ken Curtis, Festus Hagen, the rough voice, the squint, the mountain humor, the way he said Matthew as if he was both teasing the marshal and claiming him as family. Festus was not smooth. He was not polished. He did not move like a traditional hero. But that was the point. He brought a different kind of life into Dodge. The audience believed Festus was just comic relief. But the opposite truth is this. Ken Curtis was a serious performer hiding inside a strange, unforgettable character. Before Festus, he was a singer. He performed with the Sons of the Pioneers. He appeared in films. He worked in westerns long before Dodge City made him a household face. So Festus was not an accident. He was crafted. The voice. The timing. The odd rhythm. The way he could turn one sentence into something fans repeated for years. That takes skill. And it takes courage. Because replacing a beloved character is one of the hardest things television can ask. Chester was gone. The audience had memories. The show needed a new energy. Ken Curtis gave it one. Festus did not erase Chester. He changed the town. He made Dodge City feel rougher. Stranger, more lived in. More like a place with dust in its bones. But here is the hard truth. The man who made Festus sound wild and indestructible was not indestructible. Ken Curtis died in 1991 at age 74 after a heart attack. And with him, one of the most recognizable voices in Western television went silent. That is what time does to reruns. It lets the voice keep speaking after the person is gone. But there was another name in Dodge City, a name that would later become much bigger than the dusty street. Burt Reynolds. Quint Asper. The blacksmith. The half-Comanche young man with a sharp edge and a future the audience could not have predicted. When Burt Reynolds appeared on Gunsmoke, he was not yet the movie star America would later know. Not yet the bandit. Not yet the box office king. Not yet the man with the smile that filled theaters. He was a young actor inside a legendary show, learning how to hold the screen. The audience believed Quint was just one more Gunsmoke character. But the opposite truth is this. Gunsmoke was one of the first places America saw Burt Reynolds becoming Burt Reynolds. Quint had tension. Charm, pride, restlessness. He did not feel like a man who would stay forever. And he did not. Reynolds left the show, then built one of the most famous careers in Hollywood. Deliverance, The Longest Yard, Smokey and the Bandit, Boogie Nights. He became bigger than Dodge City, but fame has its own price. Reynolds later lived through injuries, financial problems, career ups and downs, and the strange pain of becoming both adored and mocked by the culture that once crowned him. That is why his Gunsmoke years feel different now. Quint looks like a young man passing through town. And in real life, that is exactly what he was. Burt Reynolds died in 2018 at age 82, and when he died, Gunsmoke lost not only a cast member, but one of its most famous travelers. The man who rode out of Dodge, became a legend somewhere else, then still ended like everyone else. Mortal. Remembered. Gone. But there was one more recent loss that changed the title of this story. Roger Ewing. Thad Greenwood, the young deputy who came into Gunsmoke in the 1960s and gave Dodge City another face of youth. His story is different, quieter, and because it happened so recently, it makes 2026 feel even more serious. Roger Ewing was not just an actor who joined Gunsmoke, he had grown up as a fan of the show. Think about that. A boy watches Dodge City, then years later walks into it. That sounds like a dream, and for a while he became part of the world he once watched from the outside. But then, he left acting in the 1970s. He moved into photography. He lived a quieter life. He became involved in local life away from Hollywood. That is a different kind of ending. Not a huge movie career. Not constant fame. Not endless interviews. A step away. A life outside the street. But in December 2025, Roger Ewing died at age 83. And that changed the surviving cast story. Because after Ewing was gone, Buck Taylor became the last surviving regular from the main Gunsmoke cast. That is the line that makes the whole town feel empty. The young deputy from the later years, gone, the old marshal, gone, Doc gone, Kitty gone, Chester gone, Festus gone, Quint gone, and now only Newly remains. Buck Taylor. Newly O'Brien. The gunsmith who became a deputy. The man who entered Dodge City later and somehow became the final living link to its main cast. The audience believed Newly was just part of the later seasons. But the opposite truth is this. In 2026, Newly carries the whole street on his back. Buck Taylor was born in 1938. He joined Gunsmoke in the late 1960s and stayed until the series ended. His character began as a gunsmith, then became a deputy marshal. That detail matters more now. A gunsmith repairs weapons. A deputy carries law. Newly moved from tools to duty. From the edge of the story toward the center of Dodge City, and decades later, Buck Taylor found another life connected to the West. He became known as a Western artist. He continued acting. He appeared in later Western projects. He carried the image of the frontier into paintings, not just performances. That is powerful. Because most actors leave a show behind. Buck Taylor seems to have carried the world of Gunsmoke into another form. And now, as the last surviving regular, his story becomes more than a career update. He is the final witness. The last living doorway into that old Dodge City. The last person from the regular cast who can remember the set, the dust, the costumes, the rhythm. The strange feeling of making a town that millions believed in. That is why this story hits harder than a normal Then and Now video. Because Gunsmoke was never built to feel temporary. It was built to feel permanent. Matt Dillon would always be there. Doc would always complain. Kitty would always watch from the Long Branch. Chester would always call for Mr. Dillon. Festus would always say Matthew. The street would always wait for the next stranger. But time did what no outlaw could do. It cleared Dodge City. One by one, name by name, voice by voice. And suddenly, the old show becomes something else. Not just a Western. A roll call. James Arness gone, Milburn Stone gone, Amanda Blake gone, Dennis Weaver gone, Ken Curtis gone, Burt Reynolds gone, Roger Ewing gone, Buck Taylor still here. Only one main regular remains. And that changes the meaning of the show. Because Gunsmoke was about law and order. But time is the one force no marshal can arrest. It was about doctors healing wounds. But time is the one wound no doctor can close. It was about saloons full of voices. But time is the bartender that eventually turns down the lights. It was about deputies standing beside the marshal. But time is the road that leaves every deputy walking alone. That is why the reruns feel different now. When Matt Dillon steps into the street, you are not just watching a hero. You are watching James Arness before the final goodbye. When Doc complains, you are not just hearing a joke. You are hearing Milburn Stone still alive in sound. When Kitty looks across the saloon, you are not just seeing romance. You are seeing Amanda Blake holding a silence that outlived her. When Chester limps beside the marshal, you are not just watching loyalty. You are watching Dennis Weaver before he escaped the role. When Festus says Matthew, you are not just hearing a funny voice. You are hearing Ken Curtis turn skill into immortality. When Quint appears, you are watching Burt Reynolds before the world knew how big he would become. When Thad walks into Dodge, you are watching Roger Ewing before he chose a quieter road. And when Newley appears, you are watching the man who would one day become the last witness. That is the hidden story of Gunsmoke. The show was not only about the Old West, it became a town where television stored memories, a place where faces remain young, while the real people pass into dates. 1980, 1981, 1983, 1984, 1985, 1986, those are not just years, they are doors closing along the same street. And now, in 2026, Dodge City feels silent. But maybe that is why people still watch. Because every rerun brings them back. For 1 hour, the saloon has voices again. Doc is still annoyed, Kitty is still watching, Matt is still standing, Chester is still loyal, Festus is still strange, Quint is still young, Newley is still there, and the street is not empty anymore. That is the strange mercy of television. It cannot save people from time. But it can let us visit them again. Gunsmoke gave America a fantasy of justice. But now it gives something even deeper. A way to remember. So the next time the opening begins, and Matt Dillon walks into that dusty street, listen carefully. That is not just a gunfight anymore. It is a roll call. A town answering from the past. A marshal standing against time, even though time already won. Drop a comment. Which Gunsmoke cast member's story hit you the hardest? Was it James Arness, the wounded soldier who became America's marshal? Amanda Blake, the woman who made Miss Kitty unforgettable? Dennis Weaver, the deputy who escaped the role? Ken Curtis, the singer who became Festus? Roger Ewing, the young fan who entered Dodge and quietly left Hollywood? Or Buck Taylor, the last surviving regular still carrying the dust of Dodge City? And be honest, when you watch Gunsmoke now, does it still feel like a Western, or does it feel like an empty street where the voices are still calling?